the Warden Dragon. This is a creature only spoken about in ancient rumors and whispered legends. Only a few Minecraft players have ever heard of this rare and elusive mob, and while some might have claimed to see it for themselves, there's still no trace of it. Any evidence of it has yet to be uncovered, but we do know two things. First, we know about the Wardens. If you've ever stumbled upon a skulk shrieker in the deep dark, then there's a high chance you've crossed paths with one of these tough mobs. Secondly, there's only one dragon known to still exist in the world of Minecraft, the legendary end boss for all players, the Ender Dragon itself. If you've managed to survive for long enough, gathered the right resources, and crafted yourself plenty of armor and weapons, then you'll be able to build a portal to the end. There, you'll be faced with the Ender Dragon, and your biggest fight for survival will begin. But what's a Warden Dragon? If the name is anything to go by, then it must be a combination of an Ender Dragon and a Warden. But where could something like that come from? And how could both of these strong, scary mobs possibly be combined into something even more powerful? Is it even possible? And if the Warden Dragon really does exist, what could that mean for the future of Minecraft? In order to uncover the truth about the Warden Dragon, we have to search deep into the history of Minecraft. Luckily, if you know where to look, the right villager could point you in the direction of someone who's heard the old stories. And if not, then maybe after a lot of reading you might come across an old book that has the ancient tale written within its pages. The tale begins many, many years before the first players ever set foot in the world of Minecraft. Back then, things were mostly the same as the way they can be found today. But there were a few key differences. Dragons. Lots of dragons. They used to fill the skies in flocks, their giant wings blocking out the sunlight for a moment as they passed by overhead. But those who dwelt within the villages of the overworld never had any reason to be alarmed. The dragons were peaceful creatures. Sometimes, if a village felt under attack from undead mobs late at night, there was a way they could call to the dragons to aid them. If a dragon answered their calls, then it would swoop down from high above to fend off skeletons, phantoms, zombies, and other frightening undead. But the dragons never helped for free. They only ever asked for one thing in return for their assistance: gold. But the most powerful dragon amongst them all was, of course, the Ender Dragon. Even back then, there was only ever just one of them. This particular dragon wasn't too fond of helping out villagers who were in danger, and would instead just keep to itself. Luckily, there was a place that only the Ender Dragon could get to, which only it had access to, its own quiet world, the place most players now call the End. The End wasn't just home to the Ender Dragon, but also the Endermen. If you've ever bumped into one of these tall, shadowy figures, then you'll know that they're quite a fright. And not to be messed with, but they weren't always like that. According to the legend, the Endermen were just as peaceful as the dragons, or even the harmless villagers in the overworld. They minded their own business, building themselves homes and living in the End. So what happened? How did everything change? And what did the Warden Dragon have to do with it all? Well, the more of this legend that you read, the more you'll uncover about how the Warden Dragon came to be. For a time, there was peace and harmony. Villagers lived alongside dragons in the overworld. Meanwhile, the Endermen lived alongside the Ender Dragon in their world, and both of these places thrived. That is until a group of villagers fell under attack by a mob. One night, an army of skeletons rose from the underground, picking up bows and as many arrows as their bony arms could carry. They marched across the land toward the nearest village, and as night fell, they began their attack. The skeletons started firing arrows everywhere. Some had even brought swords and started smashing up the houses that the villagers had worked tirelessly to build. Without any weapons of their own, the villagers were caught by surprise. They hadn't been prepared for an attack and had no way to defend themselves. So instead, they quickly realized there was only one thing they could do to repel the undead army. "Someone, run up the hill, light the beacon, and call a dragon to help us!" And so as the skeletons let their arrows fly, one of the villagers was able to rush up the nearby hill. Right at the top was a beacon, and all it took was the fire from some flint and steel to set it ablaze. From high up above, the glow of the fire caught the attention of a dragon that was passing overhead. Spotting the flames, the winged creature swooped down to get a closer look. Passing through the clouds, it could see the village under attack and immediately flew in to answer their call for help. Even when they turned their bows to the sky, the skeleton horde was no match for the dragon's awesome power. Every arrow they tried to fire at the dragon either missed or couldn't even leave so much as a scratch on its mighty scales. And it didn't take a lot of effort for the dragon to make quick work of those skeletons. Before long, they were left as just piles of bones and discarded bows. But the trouble didn't stop there. The villagers were grateful that the dragon had come to aid them, saving them from their undead attackers. But then, of course, the dragon asked to be paid for its help. "You know our price. I have come to your aid in a time of need. Now it falls to you to repay me in gold." If the villagers had gold, then no doubt they would have handed it right over to thank the dragon. But the problem was, nobody had ever come across any gold before. They had been mining nearby for ages, but had only ever found iron. "Listen, we don't have any gold here, but we have plenty of iron. We know dragons prefer gold, but how about we give you some of our iron instead?" "Iron? You dare offer me iron instead of gold?" The dragon was outraged and turned against the villagers it had just come to protect. Using its fiery breath, it burned down what was left of their houses and left the entire village in flames. While the villagers ran away to safety out of fear for their lives, their homes were destroyed. By the time the flames had settled, there was nothing left but ruins. The villagers were outraged by what had happened. While some of them had hoped the dragon would be merciful or would at least leave them alone now, others were angry to have lost everything, all because they offered iron instead of gold. One of the villagers, a respected craftsman, stepped forward. "Well, I think we should show them just what we can do with iron." He was a particularly good craftsman, and he came up with a plan to get back at the dragons. Heading into the mine near the ruined village, the craftsman went searching for iron and returned with plenty for his plan. He turned the iron into 4 iron blocks, then put them in a T shape. It's still missing something. He grabbed a pumpkin that had been growing in a patch near one of the houses, one of the only ones left that hadn't been burned by the dragon's fire. Then he placed the pumpkin on top of the iron blocks, and an iron golem was formed. "A golem? What's that for? We should be rebuilding our homes, not making monsters." "This golem is going to help us get back at the dragons." The craftsman explained his plan to get revenge. He would send his iron golem out into the world to find the dragon who burned the village down. They knew it would be living somewhere high up, probably in a cave at the very top of the mountain. So the craftsman told his golem, "You find where that dragon's lair is, and when he leaves to fly around above, then I want you to steal every scrap of gold he has stashed away in his cave. That ought to teach him a lesson." And so, obeying what its creator had told it, the iron golem set off to find the dragon's lair. There was just one tiny problem with the plan. It had no idea where to start looking. Getting a little confused, the iron golem ventured deep into the caves beneath the overworld, instead of climbing up the mountains to look for the dragon. It didn't take very long for the poor creature to get lost down a particularly long corridor, a winding stretch of dark stone with almost no light. It was so dark that the golem couldn't find its way back out. Lost underground, the golem started to get hungry, but it still couldn't find its way out of the caves. It traveled further into the caves, and the further it went, the more lost the creature became. Its hunger was getting bad, worse by the second, and things weren't looking good for the poor lost golem. But it would soon discover there was still something it could eat. Even while lost deep underground, in the caves was a rare type of plant that only grew in the deepest, darkest parts of the world. It was called skulk growth, and the iron golem just so happened to find some. The poor creature was lost and had been for such a long time that it was desperate to eat, so it started feeding on the skulk growth. But it seemed to have a very strange effect on the golem. Over time, living underground and only eating skulk growth, the golem started to transform. It got so used to how dark it was in the caves that it didn't need to see anymore, instead listening out for vibrations and sniffing to detect anything that might be moving around. Its diet of skulk growth also gave it a lot more strength, and it could even now let out a sonic boom attack. It wasn't an iron golem anymore. It had become a warden. Then, one day, a long time since it had first been sent off to find the dragon, this warden started to sense something close by. There were vibrations louder than any it had detected before. It was coming from high up, so it began to navigate through the caves, gradually getting higher and higher. Although it couldn't see, the Warden was underneath a mountain and was following the source of the vibrations all the way up to its peak. And what was causing the vibrations? Well, it was the snores of a sleeping dragon. The Warden reached the top of the mountain and had found the dragon it had been sent for so long ago. It could smell the burning scent of the creature's fiery breath as it snored, but the Warden didn't start stealing all the dragon's gold like it had been told to way back when it had been an iron golem. Instead, something very strange began to happen. The magical, mysterious properties of the skulk growth that had transformed it into a Warden now seemed to be causing the two of them to merge together. The dragon's scales quickly turned to the same dark blue color as the Warden's skin. It made them even tougher, much stronger than even the best suit of enchanted armor. Instead of fire, this new combined creature could breathe an enormous sonic boom. Powerful enough to knock down any structure, the two of them had fused together into a new, terrifying form, the Warden Dragon. That's where the legend ends. Nobody knows if the Warden Dragon really exists, or if it's just a tall tale. We definitely know that there are no other dragons left in Minecraft, though, only the Ender Dragon. So, could the Warden Dragon have gone after all the other dragons in an attempt to steal all their gold and prove itself the most powerful? And did the Ender Dragon have to leave its home to stop this reign of terror? Well, maybe. Who's to say? After all, anything is possible in Minecraft. And maybe, just maybe, if you were to look up at just the right time, in just the right spot, then you might see the Warden Dragon flying through the sky above.